Starting live video. We're on. Excellent. Good morning. Thanks for joining us for the latest SilviaFindings live stream. This is our Wednesday morning get together with you. The last couple of months we've been doing kind of a video catalog of all of our products. We did all the pendants, and we're doing rings now. I think this or next week will be the last week that we've done doing rings, because I've only got one tray, 1.5 trays of rings, and these are all the ones that are made specifically for we call them pearl, rings, because they've got that cup and a peg that you glue the pearl on. So there's not many, I don't know, maybe like 50 rings or so. I know it seems like not many rings for such a niche purpose, but and it seems to me that some of these designs are just crazy. They're just so good, so crazy good. I love them, and there really isn't a way, because sometimes I look at them and think, oh boy, wouldn't it be great if we could adapt this for a thing. But some of them, yeah, obviously you could just remove the cup and peg and then put a setting in there, a prong setting or whatever, but a lot of them only work because you're doing them for pearls. And when I say pearls, I don't necessarily mean only pearls. Obviously, you can put any stone that is drilled partway through, halfway through. You can buy lots of stones that are spheres. You just have to figure out a way, bring them to a lapidary or somebody who can actually drill a hole, and just have them drill the hole halfway through, partway through, whatever. But before I get started on the rings, just want to introduce myself again. My name is Mark. I'll be your live stream presenter today. SilviaFindings, Canada's premier, probably the world's premier. Let me be real here. Premier provider of quality sterling silver and now gold. We have starting to get lots of gold settings in. Unmounted or what do they call it? I'm seeing it everywhere. Semi mounts. So that if you're familiar with that term, that's what it is. It's pendants, rings, bales, things that don't have stones already in them. They're made specifically for a specific size of stone. Which you can get on our websites and search by stone size, or if you have a specific style you like. And as far as our custom service goes, if you have a stone, doesn't matter what crazy size your stone is, if you have a specific pendant that you like, or a ring or whatever, but obviously your stone won't fit because it's some crazy wacky size, that some lapidary just went crazy and made some crazy shape or size, we can do it. We can do custom work. We can adapt anything. We've invested in quite a little bit of infrastructure in how we do custom work, because we've just been getting so much of it. We have a 3D stone scanner that I know it seems like, well, it's an obvious thing, right? Scanners are scanners. We've been using scanners for decades, but it's not like an optical scanner, like a paper scanner where it's 2D and it's just reading an image and creating basically like what fax machine technology. Anybody remember faxes? I remember the first time I saw a fax machine, because I worked in an office that used a telex machine, which if you know what that is, like, welcome to geriatrics. And then when we used to, communicate with our suppliers overseas via telex, which was amazing. And then we got a fax machine, and it was like magic. You could like write a piece of paper and put it in, and they would get that writing on the other end, and it was, wow. Of course, all these technologies are all ancient technologies now, like it's easier to figure out how we developed fax technology than it is for us to figure out how they built the pyramids, right? It's one of those things. Anyway, neither here nor there. But 3D scanning, now that is new technology. I mean, not really new technology, but consumer available new technology. We'll call it new. Anyway, for custom work, this has pretty much revolutionized our workflow. We can put a stone in the scanner, make a perfect 3D representation of that stone, because maybe it's not obvious why this is such a boon to our thing. When we create a custom piece for somebody, we're not carving a wax, model of that, although that is traditionally how that kind of work is done. We create a 3D model in a CAD program, in a 3D design program, CAD program. They used to be called CAD. They're not called that anymore. I don't know what they call them now, but you know what I mean. It's a 3D, drawing program. I know that sounds very simplistic, but that's basically what it is. So we recreating that pendant in that program. And if you have a stone, a 3D image of the stone, you can build the setting around that 3D image of the stone and then remove the stone. And then, then you have that 3D model that will perfectly fit the stone. Then you print 3D print, which we also have a 3D printer. Now, I don't know if you can see it. See that thing with the orange there in the thing? Let me point that. That is our industrial 3D printer, which just as another service, and obviously it's so new that I don't even know how much we're charging for it. But it's not much. We can print your 3D things. If you have 3D designs that you want to have printed, we can do it. We only print with a castable resin. So if you're gonna, for jewelry applications, anyway, so the 3D designer makes the pendant or the ring or the whatever around your 3D stone, and it doesn't have to be that. We can do it just based on dimensions, although it's 100% accurate if we have the actual stone, and mostly good if we don't. Anyway, we do a 3D print of that design that we do, and then we cast that, and that's it. I forget what my point was. We can do anything, basically. Anything, and your limitations are only, the size of the flask, so things like physics, are a problem, and budgets, whatever your budget is, we're happy to do something as complicated as it is so that we can get to the limits of your budget. Just kidding. If you've ever had custom jewelry made and you don't start doing, or if you do, just as a general rule, have custom jewelry made, unless you have, a relationship with a specific jeweler that you've been, developed over years, then keep doing that, because, jewelers are a dwindling resource because people aren't paying them what they're worth. Don't get me started on the woeful state of bench jewelers' salaries in the world. Anyway, but they're being replaced by CAD and 3D printing and easy casting. So, but you should be doing it this way, is what I'm saying, because it's way cheaper than having somebody spend 10 hours carving, a wax model, which once that thing is done, changing it, if you have changes, are not always very easy to do. I mean, theoretically, it's just wax, so you can just cut pieces off or add pieces in, and stuff like that. But it's not as easy as it is of just tweaking some dimensions in a computer program, if you know what you're doing, obviously. Anyway, I'm babbling. I'm going on way too long about custom work. I'm just so excited about the advances that we are working on for that thing. yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm not going to say anything else because there are other things happening in the background that will become live hopefully soon. People are getting vaccinated at a rate that's making me happy. I think I got my first shot this week. I think Marble is getting his shot this morning, his first one. So hopefully, my point with I think hopefully by the fall, enough people will have been got their second shot, and we'll start doing shows again. So we start seeing you, you know, one-on-one, face-to-face at shows, which would be great because God, we miss that. I miss that. I miss seeing people. There's something so special about somebody who, especially a lot of the shows we go to, there's so many stone vendors and all kinds of, you know, crazy lapidary stuff, and we're usually one of the few or only, you know, setting people, you know, so people bring their stones and they're looking for something for it to fit, and when we find something and they like it, and I set it for them right at the show, they're so happy. And I miss people being happy because this past year has been like a recipe for unhappiness. Anyway, if you share this video today, you get 10% off your any regularly priced items. I guess I have notes here because I always forget. Oh, if you share this video, we'll send you one of these polishing cloths, right, for silver. Again, you know how to use them. If you don't wash these, and it seems pretty obvious. Those polishing cloths, they get dirty. That's the point. You're supposed to use it until, when you pull it out, it's nice bright green, but when you're done working with it, it should be black. And then throw it away and buy a new one. They're only like a couple dollars. So, but if you share this video, I don't know why you would, but if you do, we'll send you one of those. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please email or throw it up on the comments here, because we're on Facebook Live right now. Eventually this will be up on YouTube, and then you could you know, make comments or ask questions there. I won't see them. Better to just email me directly, mark@canadafindings.com. And that's it. I'm not going to dunk on Canada Post today. They get enough of my ire. Shipping generally around the world is slowly but surely getting back to pre-pandemic levels. It's not there yet. It's still, you're still looking at 45 days for parcel post shipments to Europe. 2 weeks to some parts of America, and more if I'm shipping across the country in Canada, because apparently we're a third world country. But again, I'm not bragging on or ranking on Canada Post, although I kind of am, because that's my thing. Because I just I love them because they have the name Canada in their name, and Canadian, so I have to feel that sense of pride, right, towards Canada Post, the worst postal service in the world. Did I say that? I didn't mean to say that. I'm gonna get on to the rings today. Again, like I said, all the rings I'm gonna show you today are all rings that are made specifically for gluing pearls or stones or whatever half-drilled things onto them. A lot of them, and maybe when I get to the first one that you can do it, I'll talk about them. But you know what's coming. If you've watched any of the other live streams, you know what's coming. You know it. But yeah, I forget what I was saying. I was in the middle of something, and I just went somewhere else. So let me just move this down and around. Our first ring today, MTR 217, with a retail price of $22.09 and a wholesale price of $14.86. And let me just talk a little bit about the pricing, right? So when you see retail price, that's the price. If you just get in there and you buy one or whatever. To get the wholesale price, we don't have any, big criteria. You've got to, you don't need to send us copies of your business license or anything. It's just $1 minimum. If you spend up over $150 at the retail level. Sorry, at the wholesale level, then you get that price. So for this 14.86, you'd have to buy 11 of them to get $150. Now you don't have to buy $150 of one thing. You can mix and match thing, and it's not $150 of the retail price, right? So that's $22. So what am I looking at? So if you spent 7 of those, that's 148 would be 160 something, but it's not enough, right? So if you bought 8 of these, your total would be $176, right? So that's, well, why don't I get the wholesale price? Because you haven't spent it at the wholesale level. You know, at that point, right, it would be like, why don't you just buy 3 more of these and you pay less money? I know it seems weird, but trust me, there's a method to the madness. Anyway, so that's the wholesale price, $14.86, and this is just, I put a pearl in there just so that you could see. This is actually a bead, but this is kind of what it would present itself as. This is just lovely double crossover thing where it's kind of like a split shank, and the split shank becomes 2 pieces with that pearl in between, right? You see how lovely that is? And it's got that peg that you know, meant for gluing the pearl on. And when I say glue, you know, you can buy a product called pearl cement. I think that's what it's called. That's what I've seen it marketed as. But I prefer a good 2-part epoxy, the kind that dries clear. I find those are, that epoxy glue are really, really strong. MTR 088 with a retail price of $29.08 and a wholesale price of $20.55. This is just a simple band, right? Tapered band with a gorgeous plumeria flower on the top, right? And that peg in the top. And will this work? Will I be able to do this? Now, obviously, this is probably not the size pearl that I would put in there. I might put something, it's not going to fit. It's not going to work. But you get the idea what it would look like with a pearl in there. Probably 6mm, 8mm pearl, maybe. I think I would put in there. Our next item, MTR 210 with a retail price of $30.59 and a wholesale price of $22.30. This just lovely, nice wide shank with those side shoulders, you know, that come up. And I mean, this is obviously way too small of a pearl that will go in there. I don't even know if I want to try to put that on there. Right, so that you're looking at probably a nice big 12mm pearl, 14mm, something big. Now the pegs on most of these things are probably longer than you need them to be, right? So the idea and the easiest way is just to take a thin piece of wire and stick it into your pearl and then mark where the wire meets the end of the pearl, the edge of the pearl. And then pull that out, and that's how deep your hole is. And you're just going to cut this down so it's just a hair smaller than the depth of that, the depth of the hole in your pearl, right? Because then when you put the glue in, you know, some of the glue will get stuck on the in the end, and all the way through. That's why they have that kind of twisty thing, right, for the glue to harden and grab that on there. Now, I know that people will tell you that there's no glue that will work 100% on pearls, and that's true. You know, the inside of a pearl and the peg on this thing. The peg is non-porous. The pearl, depending what the core is usually non-porous. So for something to seep into them to hold them steady, to hold them glued together, is a trick that science hasn't quite figured out. Like, again, a good 2-part epoxy will go a long way to keeping it there a long time. Now, you don't ever want to use a cyanoacrylate glue, like a super glue, that, you know, really watery super glue, because the fumes of that will destroy the pearl, you know, the nacre on the pearl. So No super glues on those things, just the more gooey. Again, two-part epoxy, not that hard. MTR 360 with a retail price of $45 and a wholesale price of $28.12. I love this nice big flower, right, with the cubic zirconias, you know, set in there, channel set in there, those baguettes. So clearly you want this to be a nice big pearl, probably, I could see a beautiful, nice big Tahitian pearl in there, like a 14 or 16 millimeter pearl. Gorgeous, right? Super split shank. I love this one. And that basket is pretty traditional for that thing, the cup and peg, right? That kind of flowery peg is not going to be visible from the outside. Although if your pearl is small and it is visible, it's kind of aesthetically pleasing. So it's not a bad thing, right? You can be really versatile with the kinds of or the sizes of pearls you're putting in these things. So just saying, MTR 319 with a retail price of $42.21 and a wholesale price of $31.66. Just love, look at this, just killer ring with that lovely chevrons at the cardinal points, the north, south, east, and west, and then those cubic zirconias all the way through that, and the cubic zirconia halo where the basket is, right, the cup and peg. Now, this just got bent. So with a cup and peg like this, and sorry, I'm going to talk about this thing, you could very easily snip that peg off down at the bottom of the thing and then fill that with epoxy resin, right? The two-part epoxy resin that you can use to fill with, people are mixing things with, breast milk or cremation ashes or, little hair shavings from your dog or whatever you want, as a keepsake. You could fill that up. And then if you keep this level and you slightly overfill it, surface tension holds that resin in way more than water does, so you can get a pretty good dome over the top of that thing that will magnify something in the middle. So if you snip that tail off and sanded that, ground that down to the bottom, so there's no little nib, and then if you glued some kind of imagery, down on the inside of that dome, and then filled it with resin and slightly overfilled it so there was a dome on the top of that, it would magnify those things. Just very cool effects and possibilities. Although I still think it would look best with a giant Ethiopian or Tahitian pearl in there. MTR 366. That wasn't a sound effect, by the way. That was meant to be. That was my phone telling me that there was a sale on Etsy. $79.80 is your retail price. $49.87 is your wholesale price. Cha-ching! So this lovely, kind of feathery, I don't know, it looks very showgirl to me. I don't know. Love it. With all the cubic zirconias in there and the cup and peg down in the bottom, right? So, I mean, you can imagine this kind of a ring, right? It's a statement ring. Definitely with a good sized pearl in there, that'd definitely be good in a fist fight. Which is probably not the criteria you're worried about. MTR 320 with a retail price of $31.32 and a wholesale price of $23.49. This another gorgeous. I just love that shoulder, right? And how that shoulder comes right up outside the finger space, where right. Nice big wide basket holding that cup and peg in there, and those little flourishes around the sides with the little biconvex shapes with a couple of cubic zirconias in there, and again that cup and peg that you can snip that peg off and fill with epoxy resin. I promise I'm going to get off that epoxy resin obsession sooner or later, one day. MTR 085 with a retail price of $34.18 and a wholesale price of $23.21. So this gorgeous flower, right? One of the petals is pave set with cubic zirconias, and the others are just, the framework. Very lovely, very elegant, very simple band, right? When that flower soldered onto the top. We've got MTR 094 with a retail price of $19.98 and a wholesale price of $13.85. This, again, tapered band, right? Coming up to the shoulders that hold up and frame the basket. With a cup and peg, and that two interlocking ovals, right, that flare out on the ends, so that you got this cubic zirconia inlays here. Very gorgeous. Almost, and because they're linked the same way, right, it gives you almost a spiral effect, which I quite love. That little design subterfuge. That's a good word you don't get to use very often. MTR 084 with a retail price of $50.18 and a wholesale price of $34.01. Lovely 3-leaf clover, right, with that cubic zirconias around the perimeter of the petals and those lovely flares. So something like this, boy, you can be really versatile with the size of the pearl you put in here. You could put something as small as like maybe a 6mm pearl all the way up to, golly, I put like a 12, 14mm pearl in there. Absolutely. You'll end up, covering some of these things, which I think just looks really cool, right? If you had the pearl with those flares coming out of the background. Love it. MTR 327 with a retail price of $50.44 and a wholesale price of $37.56. Another gorgeous shoulder, right, with all the pave cubic zirconias in there. That's like so much bling. Right, all these flares up around the sides. Super gallery. And that ubiquitous cup and peg down in the center. Again, super versatile with the size of the pearl. You could put something as small as, I probably wouldn't put something smaller than like an 8 or 10mm pearl in there. But you can go right up to like, probably 14 or 16mm, right? You could definitely do something right up to the edges of that, but that's probably like 18mm. You could put a giant pearl in here. And it wouldn't look out of place because this is so grand, right? I mean, you really want a giant pearl in here, considering how grand the setting is. I love this. I find these pearl rings are so interesting because they're all so I don't know, they're designed with such a different aesthetic. MTR 089 with a retail price of $37.14 and a wholesale price of $26.31. Simple tapered band, right? Some cubic zirconias up on one side and leaf on the other and around the sides. With that open cup and peg down in the center. I just love that. Now, you probably could snip that peg off and then use tape to seal the back and then fill that with epoxy resin. Then if you want it to be crazy, you could fill all of these little cloisons with different colors of epoxy resin and then polish the whole thing again. Make it look very cool, like Intarsia almost. You don't know what Intarsia is? Come on, Google it. Okay, so intarsia is when you have you can be anything. It could be this, could be you have a space that you cut little sections of stone to fit in the space, and oftentimes you'll see like a rectangular setting that has lots of different colors of stones that are glued together in there, to fill that gaps. That's intarsia. So MTR 353 with a retail price of $50.10 and a wholesale price of $30.06. This just a classic, simple tapered band, tapered in every direction, and that lovely halo or double halo, really, of cubic zirconias all the way around, and that beautiful cup and peg. Now, this, because of the depth of the cup, it's probably almost a hemisphere, down in there. It kind of limits you a little bit with the size of the pearl. You can go a little bit smaller, but you don't want to have big gaps in there because then it just looks weird, right? So you're either going to go really small, like a 4mm ring, or you're going to do about the size of this, which is probably 12 millimeters or so, right? Just gorgeous. Here's another MTR 083 with a retail price of $52.95 and a wholesale price of $33.70. This lovely 4-leaf, it's not a clover, but whatever, we'll call it a clover. It's reminiscent of a clover anyway, with some cubic zirconia inlays around the outside edges of those the petals, and just a simple open cup and peg with a peg for gluing on your pearl or whatever. Again, when I say pearl, assume that I mean something that's half drilled. Doesn't have to be a pearl, although ostensibly these were all designed with pearls in mind, but they don't have to be. You can do whatever you want. Don't be limited by the constraints of society. MTR 207 with a retail price of $45.55 and a wholesale price of $34.71. This just giant spiral textured, golly, it's so aquatic almost. It's like it's like almost like a octopus tentacle. But it's not. It's just dots all the way around with that lovely thing and the peg down on the bottom that you could glue your pearl to. So you're looking at probably something as small as 6 or 8 millimeters up to, I don't know, probably 12 or 14 millimeters, I think would be best for these. Sits pretty high on your finger, right? But it's just very cool. MTR 351 with a retail price of $34.30 and a wholesale price of $24. This is lovely leaves and branches, right? If you're looking for a more nature kind of thing. I love how that branches texture continues down the shoulders of the ring, right? You see that? So if you're wearing it, it'll look like the whole thing is just branches. Very cool, very subtle. Very interesting, lovely little cup and peg on there. And again, even though the cup and the peg is small, there's the space there, you can use it, right? So you can put anything as small as like a 6mm pearl all the way up to probably, I don't know, what's the distance from that edge to there? Looks like 8, so maybe like 14 or 16mm pearl maybe in there. Might be kind of big or at the tall thing, but golly, I find that almost all of these pearl rings, whenever you see them on someone, it's like the pearl is always giant, extends way up into the stratosphere. It's very cool. MTR 081 with a retail price of $48.74 and a wholesale price of $30.89. This, another 3-leaf, I don't know, clover pattern thing, right? This is very simple, just the frame and the rays, The frame have cubic zirconias in there, and the rays are just laser etch cut. So, I mean, they're not actually cut by lasers. That's just cast that way. They might be burnished after the fact, though. But they give that kind of faux gemstones or faux, you know, stones in there. Gives it a little bit of flash. And that open cup and peg down in the bottom there, right? Very simple shoulders. You know, the frame's holding up the size of the flower. Now here's one, and I don't know why. This is probably one of our best sellers in this, you know, vein. Things. MTR 357 with a retail price of $24 and a wholesale price of $14.40, and it's just a simple lily pad, you know, with you know, the cup and peg down in the bottom. Very simple, elegant ring, right, with that lily pad texture there. Now you could put a small pearl, like a nice tiny 4mm pearl. You could put, you know, a way bigger pearl. You're not really limited at all, which is maybe why we sell so many of this particular style. You know, there's no limit to the size of the pearl that you can put in there. So, I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to understand the consumer's mind. MTR 056 with a retail price of $23.07 and a wholesale price of $16.34. And again, lovely, simple, you know, tapered band. And it tapers all the way around and gets thicker all the way around. It's just very interesting design how it gets thicker all the way around. So one side is noticeably thinner than the other. It's just very cool to the design. Any, of course, in that lovely swoop with that cup and peg down at the top. Now you probably don't want anything, you know, bigger than like maybe 8mm pearl on that, just because you don't need it to extend way too high in there. And I mean, that is just a recipe for disaster. You know, the pearl catching on things and knocking against everything. You put your fingers in your hand in your pocket and or in your purse, and you end up knocking your pearl off. MTR 305 with a retail price of $30.96 and a wholesale price of $19.35. Again, simple tapered band. And very cool, very interesting, right? So from the front, just from the top, it looks almost like a perfect circle, but it's got these crazy, you know, twists and dips. So it's a very three-dimensional, you know, piece. Again, here's another really good example of how the posts, the pegs on here are clearly, you know, longer than you need it to be. Because if you have a pearl that's half drilled, right? So this is a halfway point. So the pearl would extend all the way out to like here, you know, which would be ridiculous. You definitely need to cut this down to be the right length to go halfway into your thing. And again, good two-part epoxy is what the doctor ordered for these. Here's another real simple one, very classic. MTR 123 with a retail price of $19.44 and a wholesale price of $12.15. Just simple band, right? Simple, elegant band with some cubic zirconias up on the shoulder, and that simple cup and peg at the top, right? So just gorgeous, elegant, simple ring. You probably don't want to put anything smaller than 6 or 8mm in there, I would say. MTR 087 with a retail price of $58.35 and a wholesale price of $35.01. Just classic split shank, right? With that cubic zirconias up the sides, and then that flower cup almost, right? That flower cup with cubic zirconias all the way around there, and that simple cup and peg, or the open cup and peg. Again, with the peg that's probably way longer than you need it to be, but you'll cut that down to the right size. It's a really super ring. Here's a MTR 361 with a retail price of $33.78 and a wholesale price of $21.11. And this is just a lovely, oops, this got a little bent. Kind of freeform scallop shapes, right? With cubic zirconias set all through that in that almost faux bead and bright cut, setting. So it's a nice, big, elegant ring with that. I would put a big pearl in here, like a good 10 or 12 millimeter pearl to fill that space. That's a lovely frame for a beautiful pearl to get in there. MTR 317 with a retail price of $38.29 and a wholesale price of $23.94. Another very simple tapered band with some flora, I guess, not fauna because there's no animals. There's lovely vines with some pave cubic zirconia in the leaves, and then cubic zirconia set all the way around that the frame, and lovely cup and peg down on the bottom of that with a kind of flower shape, right? Gorgeous. Another one, but I'm going to save that one for last because we're getting close to the end. MTR 338 with a retail price of $52.04 and a wholesale price of $39.03. I just love this nice big wide shoulders that are pave set with stones all the way, around both sides, and a nice big open gallery, right? Nice big cup and peg in there. So again, because the cup and peg is pretty shallow, you can get a giant, pearl in there, like a big 18 or 20 millimeter pearl in there. But you could definitely go, smaller. I don't know, my caliper's with me, but the size of that cup across is probably like 14 millimeters. So, that might be a good size. Maybe 14, 16 millimeters would be gorgeous in that. MTR 214 with a retail price of $39.04 and a wholesale price of $27.34. Nice big wide shoulders, right? Come up, kind of give you a sort of a swoopy effect, right? That kind of almost like a wraparound, They come around for the giant cup and peg down the top of that. And these elements, right, are there as, framing, obviously, to be aesthetically pleasing, but they'll also help when you get your pearl, glued down onto that. They will kind of protect the pearl a little bit from being knocked around. And, the worst case scenario is your pearl gets knocked around so much that you begin bending the peg and eventually the peg breaks off, because that's super hard to get the peg out of the pearl after the fact if you want to repair it. So something like this, always super helpful. And this is one of my favorites, MTR 318 with a retail price of $31.41 and a wholesale price of $19.64. And this simple tapered band, right, with a lovely gallery section. And I love that concentric rings that are kind of moved around each other, right? So they gives it that sort of spiral effect of alternating cubic zirconia and smooth bands, smooth pieces, right? Love that spiral effect. Now this, I would probably want to get a pearl in there that's as close to the size of the cup as you can get. So like probably 14 millimeter pearl, because that's suitably grand, for ideally a grand, pearl. Here's next one is kind of a, MTR 086 with a retail price of $40.70 and a wholesale price of $27.11. We'll call it a spiritual cousin to the one that we were just looking at, right, just previously. Again, the kind of spiral, effects, although this one are two interlocking sort of ovals, or three, that kind of twist off each other, right? Gives it that sort of spiral effect again. And I just love that cubic zirconia bead and bright cut setting all the way around the inside. And the open cup and peg, again, probably want to put a big pearl in there, like a 14 or 16 millimeter pearl, something sufficiently giant. MTR 080 with a retail price of $31.28 and a wholesale price of $20.67. This just, of course, you know, we had to have one. Gorgeous, classic, stylized heart with the cubic zirconias up one side, right? And that cup and peg in the middle. I mean, that's just so cute. Oh my God. Can't go wrong. Again, probably want a bigger pearl in here, like a 12 millimeter, maybe a 10 millimeter, something, whatever works. MTR 208 with a retail price of $36.06 and a wholesale price of $27.08. And this is just a chunky, lovely, big, thick, you know, bands coming up to big, thick seat, you know, for the pearl to go into, and the cup and peg. Now this, you'd want to get a pearl that kind of fits snugly into there, right up against the edges. So like a 16 millimeter, 14 millimeter maybe pearl. Just love that. Right? Because once that's glued in there, it'll give the impression that these are what's holding, you know, the pearl in there. Obviously they won't, because they won't even fit, you know, halfway up around the perimeter of the stone. But it just gives you sort of that lovely, like, I am presenting the pearl to you sort of look, right? Gorgeous. Not a lot of bling in that one, but it's one of my favorites. MTR 336 with a retail price of $23.56 and a wholesale price of $17.16. Very simple, you know, tapered band with a lovely kind of free-form shape, row of halo of cubic zirconias in there, and the rays coming off that cup and peg frame that would set your pearl in there. Again, probably want something like that mostly fills the cup, but leaves a little bit of a gap so that you can see the rays underneath. I think that looks very cool. Probably 10 or 12 millimeter pearl would fit in there beautifully. Here's another one that I just love. Not a lot of bling, but it's just very cool. MTR 213 with a retail price of $22.30 and a wholesale price of $15.05. And this just, I mean, you can't go wrong with that, right? Lovely, very cool shoulders, right? How they have that alternating loops, right? So it looks like the band comes up and ends at a loop, and then you've got another loop that terminates and holds that flower basket up with that cup and peg in there. Just classic, can't go wrong. Just a really, really super timeless style. Again, you can be really versatile with the size of the pearl you want to put in there. You can put something as small as like a 6 or 8 millimeter pearl, all the way up to something that, you know, reaches right up to the edge, probably like 14 millimeter or so, maybe 12. But super versatile ring, and I just love that very simple, very elegant component, you know, flower basket thing, if you want to call it that. Here's just a crazy, crazy one. MTR 209 with a retail price of $50.99 and a wholesale price of $39.84. And again, just you know, lots of super free-form textures and shapes and elements. And we have a pendant that's almost exactly like this that we sell a ton of. And, you know, okay, I don't get it. It's not my aesthetic. It's just very weird, very asymmetrical, which I can't sleep at night with the asymmetry. But man, people love this. So yeah, go for it. It's very cool. So I can see the appeal. I just, yeah, weird. But gorgeous. I'm trying not to get fired here. Calling our pendants weird. Our rings weird. MTR 061 with a retail price of $27.43 and a wholesale price of $19.59. This is just very cool band, right? How it's two straight bands on the outside and the center one is kind of curved, so it hits, you know, both sides at specific places and then comes up to the center, right? So the band is kind of cool in that it's nice and wide. And then the top is just very plain, right? Very simple, right? Very simple seat for the for the pearl to sit in. The cup and peg. Probably want to put a pearl that's 10 millimeters or so it comes right to the edge of this thing. If it's bigger than that, obviously it'll keep going out past the edge, which I think is fine. As long as you have enough peg, you know, for the glue to adhere against. Our next item, MTR 078 with a retail price of $40 and a wholesale price of $25.97. Now, this lovely split shank, this one is pretty badly tarnished. Jeez. I probably should have polished this before the show. Anyway, split shank, lovely crossover, right, with that lovely cubic zirconia, rows of cubic zirconias, and that lovely, simple, open, flowery basket, cup, and peg. Promise the ones we ship you will be nice and silver and shiny. This has clearly been sitting in the tray that we take around to shows for years. So I think, and just you notice this scroll work, these kind of like curly cues in the gallery basket. I love that. Very cool, very elegant, very simple. Here's one that is none of those things. It's not simple. MTR 216 with a retail price of $33.18 and a wholesale price of $24.57. And I don't know, it's not elegant either. It's just okay, right? So you've got this lovely, you've got this big arch that comes over the top of that. And, you know, so, and you've got two spaces for pearls to be glued into. This spiral, you could probably push this out a little bit if you need that space to be bigger, but you probably couldn't put anything bigger than like a 12 millimeter pearl in there, just because, or maybe less, maybe like a 10 millimeter, because I don't think the distance between the inside edge of that curly cue and the peg is, you know, much more than 5 millimeters, 4 or 5 millimeters. This one, obviously, you could put pretty much as big as you want until it starts to hit this bar. The bar is probably there, you know, as a cool design element, I guess, if you're into that kind of thing, but also there to frame the pearls and keep the pearls from getting knocked about, you know, too badly. I don't know what to say about this particular ring, because it's just, yeah. MTR 072 with a retail price of $31.01 and a wholesale price of $20.64. So this lovely, gorgeous, right? Almost like a crossover, right? How it's sort of tapered to one side, and this is not crossover, but whatever, just kind of moves to one side. So it's like a giant leaf, right? And this is the stem of the leaf that wraps around onto itself, and this leaf kind of curls up. There's two pegs for two pearls that you could put in there, so almost like a faux pea pod kind of thing, although I don't think it's meant to be a pea pod. I think it's meant to be a leaf that curls up. Very cool design, very awesome, and looks really, really good when there's a pearl in there. So we're getting to the end. So I've got a couple of, maybe they could be called palette cleansers. MTR 354 with a retail price of $34.80 and a wholesale price of $20.88. And this is just a lovely tapered band, right? With a very simple, elegant halo of cubic zirconias around the outside and a bunch of rays towards the cup and peg on the inside. And of course, we've got a couple of other ones. This is kind of a spiritual cousin of this one, right? This the designer was drunk when he was drawing this circle, and this one he was after he got it fixed, maybe. Right, so nice big basket. I don't know how big of a pearl you want to put in there. Probably 12 millimeter, maybe 10. Right, I think the width of that cup down at the bottom is probably like 10 millimeters wide. So yeah, I would say a good 10 millimeter pearl fits beautifully in there. And another one, God, this is just so good. MTR 323 with a retail price of $29.16 and a wholesale price of $19.89. And this just a lovely rose, right, ring that comes up and around. This actually is soldered. Oh, it's not. I thought that was soldered. You could probably, so this is not soldered together, so you could probably get away with opening this up or down a little bit, to adjust the size of the ring. So if you've got half size issues, no problem. Throw that on a ring mandrel, bang on it a couple times with a nylon mallet or rawhide mallet. To make it bigger or smaller, to form it according to your will. Anyway, lovely rose, right, thing with the, the basket is a rose with a cup and peg on the inside. It's pretty deep cup, so you probably can't get away with anything bigger than like an 8 millimeter, maybe a 10 millimeter pearl in there. But I think this is one of my favorites because the cup is deep enough that it protects the pearl, beautifully, and I think it would just be stunning with a pearl in there. And again, you can also, for a cup like this, you could snip that pearl off, that peg off, grind down the bottom, and then fill that with epoxy resin, and whatever you want. You could just go crazy. Okay, this is the last ring we're going to do today. MTR 365 with a retail price of $55.20 and a wholesale price of $34.51, and we're leaving with a sufficiently blingy, lovely wide shoulders with all those cubic zirconias and little curly cues up at the gallery holding that all up, and the shoulders again with all the lovely bling cubic zirconia pave set. And God, look at that, just stunning, that double halo of cubic zirconias with the baguettes in between, right? That is just like a pile of bling. See, with something like this, you really need to have a pearl that is, oh my God, beautiful. Like a lovely iridescent South Sea pearl, something like that. Something that's really, really, Tahitian pearl, something gorgeous. That this kind of stuff frames around and says, look at this gorgeous pearl that we have in here, instead of having a pearl and saying, oh, look at all the bling on that ring. You know what I mean? Right? So if you just have a lackluster pearl, this definitely would make it a looker, but this cries out for a really super gorgeous, expensive pearl to be stuck on there. Again, probably want something 12, 14 millimeter range on this, right? So a good size pearl. Anything smaller than like a 10 millimeter, because I think the width of the cup is probably about 10 millimeters just from eye, doing it by eye. So, anything smaller than that, it begins to get overwhelmed by the crazy, crazy, gorgeous cubic zirconias in that ring, right? So that, I think, is as good a ring as any to finish on. And I think, oops, We're looking at the wrong thing. How do I go back here? Oh boy. There we go. Here I am. Hi. So that's going to do it for today as far as the rings go. We have more. Next week, I think, will be our last cataloging of the rings. I think then we'll be done with that. And then I'm not sure what we'll do next. We'll think of something. Yeah. I mean, there's so much stuff to catalog that we can literally be here for a year doing this every week, and you know, probably not have shown you cataloged all of the products that we have. And there's always new stuff coming in, right? So we're always trying to keep on top of all the new stuff as well. Thank you for joining us this week. We will see you next week at 10:30 Pacific time, which is 11:30 Mountain, and 12:30 Central, and 1:30 what is that time zone where the Maritimes are? I think they're Eastern. There you go. Whatever time it is when you're watching this is the time it is. Obviously. So thanks for joining us. We're always here. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, we love to hear it all. We're here for you. Please use us as a resource. We love that. You know, helping you out. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something about setting, you know, stones, although that's kind of what we do. Hey boss, your AirPods are at 10%. It says right on my screen here. Yeah, so please, you know, get a hold of us. Lots of ways to do it. I'm sure you can click something here, comment here, whatever. Communication is easy, or at least connecting is easy. You know, communication is hard, but you know, that's another story. So please get a hold of us, you know, for anything. You know, we're here for you. And we'll see you next week with some more rings. So in the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of the planet, take care of your mental health, get vaccinated. Come on. How hard is it? Boink. You're good. And hopefully we'll see you soon on the road at shows. And but if not, we'll be here next week, and we'll start having maybe more videos that have not so much to do with cataloging and have to do with a little more, you know, how to, a little more informational, a little more educational. That I think is my personal focus, is getting education, because and it's totally self-serving. Full disclosure, the more you guys know about how to work with the stuff, the more sophisticated your jewelry gets, and then the more expensive things you start buying. So it's a win-win, right? But we're here for you, and you know, lots of places to find information. So you know, do that. So right, take care. We will see you next week. Alrighty, bye bye.